Hello and welcome to CYC News for the 7th of February 2021 and the 30th of October 17:37 am. I'm Bushfire. In today's headlines, Mario Draghi is asked to form new Italian coalition government. The USA and Russia extend a nuclear treaty. Evacuations as dozens of Perth homes destroyed in bushfire. Over 500 Australian Open players and staff go into isolation after a hotel worker tests COVID-19 positive. Canada will list Proud Boys movement as a terrorist group. The Oxford COVID-19 vaccine could substantially cut virus spread, and Barcelona survived the major scare to reach the Copa del Rey semi-finals. But first to Italy, where the nation's president has asked the former head of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, to form a new government after the previous coalition collapsed. President Sergio Mattarella said Italy needed a high-profile government to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic and the worst economic crisis in decades. Politicians failed to agree a coalition following the recent resignation of Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. In a brief statement after accepting the challenge, Mr. Draghi said Italy was facing a difficult moment and that it was time for unity. He said, "I am confident that in talks with parliamentary and other groups, we will find unity and the ability to find a responsible solution." Mr. Draghi will now have to put forward an administration that leaders support. He was summoned to Rome's historic Quirinale Palace on Wednesday by President Mattarella, who gave Mr. Draghi a mandate and said he hoped he would break the parliamentary stalemate. Italy's financial markets welcomed the news that the country's star technocrat had been brought in, with the Milan stock market up almost 3%. Political parties have been divided over how to spend the €222 billion of EU COVID-19 recovery funds, amid a pandemic in which nearly 90,000 Italians have died, the sixth highest death toll in the world. However, Italy's anti-establishment five-star movement, which has been in government since 2018, has already said that it will not back a government led by Mr. Draghi. The United States has extended the New START nuclear arms control treaty with Russia for 5 years. Announcing the move, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said it made the world safer. President Joe Biden and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin reportedly discussed it by phone a week ago before Mr. Putin signed it into law. The treaty had been set to lapse on February 5, as the Trump administration had refused to approve the extension. It had sought tougher verification procedures and some inclusion of tactical weapons, as well as an expansion of the deal to cover China. New START is the last remaining nuclear arms deal between Russia and the US, and its demise would have ended all limits on deployments of strategic nuclear warheads and delivery systems. A Russian Foreign Ministry statement said the agreement entered into force on Wednesday after diplomatic notes were exchanged with the US Embassy in Moscow, adding that the treaty remained in effect exactly as it had been signed without any amendments or additions. Originally signed in 2010, the treaty limits each side to 1,550 long-range nuclear warheads, a lower number than under the previous START deal. Each country is allowed in total no more than 700 deployed intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and heavy bombers equipped for nuclear arms. Another 100 are allowed if they are not operationally deployed, for example, missiles removed from a sub undergoing a long-term overhaul. Overall, the amendments are seen as a significant reduction from the original treaty. Returning home to Australia now, and hundreds of Australians have fled to evacuation centres as the bushfire on the outskirts of the lockdown city of Perth continues to grow and threaten communities. The blaze, the largest the city has seen in years, has burnt through 9,000 hectares, destroying 71 homes. 6 firefighters have suffered injuries. Fire services urged communities near the blaze to prepare to leave or take shelter on Wednesday. Western Australia's capital was in the middle of a COVID-19 lockdown, complicating safety advice messages for Perth's 2 million residents. State officials urge people to prioritise their immediate safety over the virus risk, which is considered very low. Perth entered a 5-day lockdown due to end last Friday over just one locally acquired infection. WA Fire Commissioner Darren Clem said, "The important thing is the preservation of life, so if you're quarantining and you're required to evacuate, you should just evacuate." Officials urge people to wear masks and self-isolate where possible at evacuation centres. Perth entered a snap lockdown last Sunday after Western Australia's first local COVID-19 infection in 10 months. No new cases have been reported since then. The Wooroloo fire, which started last Monday, has a 100-kilometre perimeter and is burning about 30 kilometres east of central Perth. Strong winds last Tuesday caused it to spread rapidly and made it near impossible for firefighters to suppress, officials said. Embers were reported 5 kilometres ahead of the fire front. About 507 Australian Open players, officials and support staff who stayed at the Grand Hyatt Hotel in Melbourne queued to get tested on Thursday. They were initially required to go into isolation after a hotel worker tested positive for COVID-19. This was one of the designated quarantine hotels where some of the 1,000 Australian Open players, officials and support staff stayed to complete a 14-day quarantine period on their arrival in Australia. Thursday's play at the 6 warm-up events at Melbourne Park was cancelled as a result, but Victoria Premier Daniel Andrews said, "At this stage there is no impact on the tournament proper. This is one case, there is no need for people to be panicked or alarmed." Players were free to return to competition after a negative test. Tennis Australia CEO Craig Tiley said 495 of those had tested negative by Friday morning, with the final 12 results expected later on Friday. The Grand Slam tournament was initially pushed back by 3 weeks to enable players to quarantine. The draw was scheduled to be made behind closed doors on Thursday evening, but instead took place on Friday afternoon to accommodate test results. Australia has imposed some of the world's toughest restrictions over the past year in a bid to suppress the coronavirus. Months of strict border controls, both internationally and domestically, have helped limit COVID-19 cases to less than 29,000 and deaths to less than 1,000. Over to Canada now, where far-right group Proud Boys has been designated as a terrorist entity. Public Safety Minister Bill Blair said the decision was influenced by the group's pivotal role in the January 6 riots at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. In Canada on Wednesday, Mr. Blair described a growing threat of ideologically motivated violent extremism. He did not specify how many Proud Boys chapters are currently in Canada. The designation allows the Proud Boys' assets to be frozen, and members of the groups could be charged with terrorist offences if they commit violent acts. The group is all-male and anti-immigrant and has a history of violent political confrontations. It was founded in 2016 by Gavin McInnes, the Canadian co-founder of Vice Media, which has worked to distance itself from Mr. McInnes and the groups. The Proud Boys platform includes ideas espoused by former US President Donald Trump, libertarianism and traditional gender roles. Mr. Trump mentioned the group during the first US presidential debate last October. The announcement in Canada comes 1 week after the US Department of Homeland Security warned of a heightened threat of domestic terrorism from violent extremists unhappy with the outcome of the presidential election. And just hours after the announcement, the US Justice Department announced it had arrested and charged a top member of the group's Seattle chapter. Ethan Nordian, who is also known as Rufio Panman, is at least the 8th group member to be charged in connection with the Capitol riots. In some health news, the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine could lead to a substantial fall in the spread of the virus, says scientists. The impact of COVID-19 vaccines on transmission has been a crucial unknown that will dramatically shape the future of the pandemic. The study, which has not been formally published, also showed the vaccine remained effective while people waited for a second dose. It was 76% effective during the 3 months after the first shot. The impact on transmission is critical. If a vaccine only stops you getting severely ill, but you can still catch and pass on the virus, then everyone will need to be immunized to be protected. But if it also stops you spreading the virus, then it could have a far greater impact on the pandemic, as each person who is vaccinated indirectly protects other people too. The report said the data indicate that the vaccine may have a substantial impact on transmission by reducing the number of infected individuals in the population. The study by the University of Oxford swabbed participants weekly to test them for the presence of COVID-19. If there is no virus, then they cannot spread it. In the study, the numbers testing positive halved in people once they had been given 2 doses of the vaccine. The UK, amid global debate and in sharp contrast to other countries, is prioritising giving its first dose to as many people as possible, with over 9.6 million people receiving it so far. And in sport, extra time goals from Antoine Griezmann, Frenkie de Jong and Jordi Alba sealed a dramatic Copa del Rey quarter-final victory for Barcelona after trailing Granada 2-0 until the 88th minute. Late goals from Griezmann and Alba forced extra time after Kennedy and Roberto Soldado scored to give Granada the lead. Federico briefly made it 3-3 from the penalty spot in extra time. The visitors registered 36 attempts at Granada's goal, 20 of which were on target. Ronald Koeman's side joined Sevilla, Levante and Athletic Bilbao in the semi-finals. Barcelona reached 6 Copa del Rey finals between 2014 and 2019, winning 4 of those, but were beaten by Athletic Bilbao at the quarter-final stage last season. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Bishoy Basilius from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. See you next time.